And I got to tell you, I don't get this whole Kardashian thing. I was, my family took my mom to Italy for her birthday. And we were in Florence, and as it turned out, it was during Fashion Week, which is a total mistake. Don't ever go there. The place was just packed. And as we're just sliding through these crowds and crowds of people, I noticed this camera crew just going through this, the people, and they're paparazzi and cameras and boom mics and all kinds of stuff. And I leaned over to see what it was, and it was, what's her name? Snooki. Snooki from Jersey Shore. Jersey Shore, right? Never seen the show, yeah. And this woman is walking down the cobbled streets of Florence, pulling her wheeled luggage. I don't know about you. I pull my wheeled luggage from the cab into the hotel. That's it. But she's wandering around with her wheeled luggage. Everybody's watching her. I turned to my brother and I said, this is the problem. Now people see her and they think that's America. And she doesn't really represent America. And who watches these shows? I just don't get it. And just as those words left my lips, my sister-in-law was running down the street with a pen and a pad of paper to get her autograph. So, what do I know? Communication is so important, and the greatest communicator, I think, of modern America is my favorite president, Ronald Reagan. If you ever go to the Reagan Library, every once they show a little footage of some editorial cartoonists that were visiting him in the Oval Office. I was one of those guys. If you watch that little film loop, I'm in the second row. Of course, I had a lot more hair back then. But what I loved about Ronald Reagan was his sense of humor. The media refuses to give him credit beyond being a great communicator, but he did great things. The biggest tax cuts ever that generated 2 decades of economic growth. But as he was visiting with us in the Rose Garden that day, the joke he told was about the difference between the United States and the Soviet Union. Democracy versus, communist society, where free speech is limited. And he said, the difference between the United States and the Soviet Union is in the United States, political cartoonists can draw the President of the United States. In the Soviet Union, political cartoonists must draw cartoons on the President of the United States. And it was a funny joke, but a brilliant point. He codified the difference between freedom and slavery in one joke. He was essentially an editorial cartoonist with words. His jokes were funny, but they always had a cogent point. When you look back at the Reagan administration, on March 8th, 1983, Reagan declared the Soviet Union the evil empire. And the reaction from the press was immediate. There was a blanket of condemnation that arose from these political pundits and the mainstream media. The critics and conventional wisdom called Reagan's remarks unpresidential and an abrogation of diplomacy. They characterized him as a doddering old man who was barely in charge of his mental faculties, who obviously was unaware of what he was saying, or worse. But in the most remote part of Siberia, deep in a Soviet gulag, in a dark and dingy cell, a sympathetic guard leaned over to a Soviet dissident, a political prisoner, and he quietly whispered between the iron bars of his cell, the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, has called the Soviet Union the evil empire. That whisper hung in the air for a moment. The guard left him in the darkness of his prison cell. Quietly, the metallic sound of a worn spoon tapped against a stone in Morse code, repeating the news, which echoed along the walls of the gulag. Ronald Reagan has called the Soviet Union the evil empire. It was one spoon, followed by another, and another, until it exploded into a cacophony of defiance. Words have meaning. Words have power. That's what makes America great, is we have the freedom of those words. You know, when you look at the America that Ronald Reagan inherited, it'll be a good lesson for the Trump administration, because I think they have the same path in mind. And we'll see. You know, what was laid out in Gettysburg was a good outline of things that need to be done. Reagan took us from the darkness. He restored funding and established a strong national defense and advocated a diplomatic policy of peace through strength. He pledged to reduce government programs. He pushed a 25% across-the-board tax cut in income taxes, the largest in history. And people complain that was just, you know, that was going to be a windfall for the rich. But the top 10% were paying 48% of the total income taxes by 1981. By 1988, the top 10% were paying 57.2%. So they're wrong. Don't believe them. These things work. Most of all, rather than apologize for America, he made America believe in itself again. It was a uniquely American idea, one that believed in the power of the people rather than the government to find the answers to our problems. Reagan believed if government would just get out of the way, Americans in America could provide the solutions. In comparison, we've seen what the Obama administration has done. Hugely expanded federal government. It's become a nanny state. These progressives believe that you should check in with them before you decide how much soda pop you can have.
That's ridiculous.
You know, Albert Einstein said, intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. President Obama created them. You know, I start off, this is my book. I start off the introduction of my book. I'm proud of my introduction. The National Review called it the best factual takedown of the Obama administration written yet. My friend, Vice President Cheney, wrote the introduction, and Rush wrote the backward. But I start off the book saying the Peter Principle is when a person is elevated to their level of incompetence. The Obama Principle is what happens when that person becomes president of the United States. You know, and I could go through the Obama record, but we just don't have enough time. I mean, I'm looking at some of the things. Now, the U.S. household median income level dropped 12% in the 6 years between 2007 and 2013. By 2013, incomes had dropped twice as much during the recovery than they did during the recession. More than 48 million Americans are living in poverty, including 1 in 5 young adults. 65% of children living in households receive one or more forms of federal aid. 46.4 million Americans are receiving food stamps. The labor participation rate is the lowest rate since 1978. The U6 unemployment rate is at 11.5%. During the Obama administration, we witnessed the first ever credit downgrade in U.S. history in 2011. During the Obama administration, we witnessed the second ever credit downgrade in U.S. history in 2012. We've seen a dramatic increase in income inequality. Black and minority families actually have been hit the hardest. The wealth of white households was 13 times the median wealth of blacks in 2013, which is 7 times greater than it was in 2010. This is the destruction that's been reaped on America. You know, the root cause of this has been the substantial growth in government regulations. I think somebody said it's estimated $1.2 trillion in cost per year. And programs under this administration that he wants to expand, and now they want to give free college to everybody. We have $128 trillion in unfunded liabilities from entitlement programs today, not to mention the almost $20 trillion in debt.